Hello, students, and a very warm welcome. Have you ever just stopped and looked at a giant tree and wondered, how did this grow from just a tiny little seed? Or maybe, why a plant can keep growing its whole life, but we humans stop growing after a certain age? Well, today, we're going to uncover the secret behind this amazing power of nature by exploring a very special plant tissue.
So what's our plan for this explainer? First, we'll crack the code of how plants grow. Then we'll meet the real superstar of the story, the meristem tissue. After that, we'll take a closer look at its special cells, find out where they're located in the plant, and finally, we'll see what happens to them when they grow up and get a permanent job.
All right, let's jump right in. The very first piece of our puzzle is something you've probably already noticed. Think about it for a second. Both plants and animals grow, right? But they do it in completely different ways.
Now have a look at this. On the left, you see how we animals grow. Our growth is uniform. Our entire body grows together, but only for a limited time. Once we become adults, we stop getting taller. But now, look at the right side. A plant's growth happens only in specific areas, like the tips of its shoots and roots. And here's the amazing part. This growth can continue for its entire life. So this brings us to the big question, doesn't it? What is the secret behind a plant's incredible ability to grow and grow? What makes its growth so fundamentally different from our own? Well, the answer lies in a very special group of cells. It's a type of tissue that is completely dedicated to growth. So let's go ahead and unveil this secret. The special tissue responsible for all this growth is called meristematic tissue. Let's say that again, slowly. Meristematic tissue. This is the dividing tissue in plants, and it's found only in the specific regions where growth happens. This is the most crucial point to remember. Unlike in animals, growth doesn't happen all over the plant body, only where this tissue is present. Okay, so what makes the cells of this tissue so special? Let's take a closer look now at a single meristematic cell to really understand its features. You can think of these cells as tiny, busy factories. They are working all the time, so they need a lot of energy and resources. That's why they are packed with dense cytoplasm and have a large, prominent nucleus. That's the control center, right? Directing all the activity. Their walls are thin, which makes it easier for them to divide again and again. But here's something curious. They're missing something most other plant cells have. They lack vacuoles. Let's just pause and think about that. Why would these cells lack vacuoles? Well, what's the main job of vacuoles? It's to store things, like food and water, and to give the cell support. But meristematic cells, they have only one job, to divide. They aren't storing anything. They are just busy creating new cells. So they just don't need those large storage sacks. Now that we know what these cells are like, let's find out where exactly in the plant we can find them. Based on their location, we can classify meristematic tissues into 3 types. This picture gives us a great overview of the 3 types of meristems. You have the apical, the lateral, and the intercalary. You can see how they are located in different parts of the plant, right? Let's zoom in on each one to understand what it does. First up is the apical meristem. Just imagine the very tip of the shoot reaching up towards the sky, and the very tip of the root pushing down into the soil. That is exactly where you find apical meristem. Its job is to add new cells to increase the length of the plant. It makes the plant taller and its roots longer. Now, for this second type. As a tree gets older, its trunk gets wider and thicker, doesn't it? Well, this increase in thickness, or what we call girth, is all thanks to the lateral meristem. It's found along the sides of the stem and root, almost like a cylinder, and as its cells divide, the plant grows wider. And finally, we have the intercalary meristem. This one is often found near the nodes, which is just the base of the leaves, or the parts of the stem between the leaves. You know the perfect example? Grass. When a lawnmower cuts the top of the grass, it just grows back so quickly. This is because of the intercalary meristem sitting at its base, ready to grow. So the meristem just keeps producing all these new cells. But what happens to them? Do they just keep dividing forever? Well, no. They actually start a new journey, a journey to get a specific job. This process is called differentiation. It's almost like the cells are growing up. A new cell, fresh from the meristem, matures and then takes on a permanent shape, a specific size, and a special function. And once it does this, it usually loses its ability to divide. It becomes part of what we call a permanent tissue. So, let's trace this journey, shall we? It all begins when a meristem cell divides. Then the newly formed cell grows and matures. As it matures, it changes to perform a special role. Maybe it becomes a part of the tissue that carries water, or the tissue that stores food. And finally, it settles into its new job as part of a permanent tissue.
Okay, so what are the most important points to remember from our discussion today? First, that plant growth is not everywhere. It's localized only to the regions with meristems. Second, that meristem cells are super active and are specially designed for division. Third, remember that apical meristems make plants longer and lateral meristems make them wider. And finally, these amazing cells differentiate to form all the other types of tissues in the plant. So, as you can see, meristematic tissue is the true architect of the plant's body. It's the engine of growth that allows a tiny seed to become a mighty tree. And when these cells specialize, they create a whole new world of permanent tissues. But what are their jobs, and how do they work together? Well, we will explore that in our next explainer. Thank you for joining me on this journey today.